We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends if you want to support this Rebel Outpost college football YouTube channel. Hit the $ when you put a comment in, and we'll get to your super chat as quick as possible. Welcome into the studio. Come on in. Come on in. Welcome into the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a legend in the chat room or with your phone calls later in the show. A power move by the Wolfpacks in the state of North Carolina. Hear me out. Hear me out. Hold on. Hear me out. I had a very interesting conversation today by somebody, we'll just say somebody in the industry. And the conversation went something like this. Yeah, pretty interesting what they did there. The Board of Governors, the state of North Carolina, the power shifted from here to there. And, you know, North Carolina and North Carolina State, they're not binded by the hip. Right? Correct? And the answer was, no, they're not. But then for the next 20 minutes, yeah, they're not attached to the hip. Okay? North Carolina and North Carolina State is not attached to the hip. But, and it's a big but, North Carolina State's interest, they officially pulled their power move, and it's significant. It really cleared things up for me today. And then we had the big article from Andrew Carter for News and Observer. We're going to be going through that article. I'm sure a lot of people haven't read it yet. We're going to be going through in this live show. There was one part in there. It's a long article, and we're going to go through the whole thing. But there is a PATC money shot in that article. And it was made by Peter Hans, the president. It's significant. We've been talking about how North Carolina State, the politics of it all in the state of North Carolina, how they have growing power in the legislature. They do. They have growing power. Even though they're not the biggest brand, they have all this power, and it's being wielded. They're not attached at the hip. However, there's a big however. And we're going to get to it. We're going to get to it at the end of the monologue. I got a bunch of little stories to get through, and then we're going to get to the big story today. Cloak and Dagger by the Wolfpacks in the state of North Carolina. But I'm going to leave you with this. And then eventually we'll get back to it. The SEC and the Big Ten, because the Big Ten, North Carolina, remember, one of the top 3 rules of realignment here at PATC and everywhere is the school calls the conference first. North Carolina, when the ACC implodes, North Carolina is going to officially call the SEC and the Big Ten. This is not going to be an Oklahoma-Texas situation where they both just called together. They called the SEC, and they did not call Kevin Warren. So let me just leave it with this, and then we're going to get back to it. When North Carolina, UNC Chapel Hill calls officially the SEC and the Big Ten, those negotiations are not between the SEC, the Big Ten, and North Carolina. They're between the SEC and the North Carolina Board of Governors. The Big Ten and North Carolina Board of Governors. UNC Chapel Hill, the Chancellor, the Board of Regents, they're just the ones who are walking the paper back and forth. They're just the middle guy in this. And if you think of it that way, the implications, we are going to get back to it at the back end of our monologue. So buckle up, brace for impact. There was a power move made by the powers who support North Carolina State in the state of North Carolina. Now, Kenneth Evans, North Carolina State is not going to be invited by the SEC. It ain't happening. It very well might not happen. I would tend to agree with you. But it still was a power move because there's going to be a cost associated with all of this. North Carolina, this did not all happen. This did not just all happen. And the final result is going to be North Carolina is going to leave and say bye. And North Carolina State's going to say bye. And that's it. That's not how this is going to play out. They were so proactive in this. The Board of Governors is so heavy with North Carolina State's interest. It's palpable. So no, this isn't just a clean, they're not attached to the hip, but they ain't gonna be a clean break. Guarantee you that. Okay, let's, I want to thank everybody that has come on in early for Friday night, March 1st. Wow, it's March. Holy smokes, what happened to February? Wow. Jeff Jorgensen is in the house. Minnesota Seminoles in the house. Randy Taylor, Struthers. Jamie Thornton, Mrs. Razorback is in the house. Joe Z, Jensen Roberts, Matt Neeson, Go Cyclones. AMAC, Tim Bales, Expedition Greg, the Architect. Smash that like button. Michael Uten, Terrapin, JD Turtle, holy smokes. The Husky, Ted Evans, early peak member in the house. The Buckeye, Jared Jones is in the house. Caleb Ramirez is in the house. Buckshot Kid, early peak member. He's here at the beginning of the show. Canes all day. Free the Canes from the ACC. Joe Z, Randy Taylor, Ryan Brooks, Jonathan Price. You know, Greg, what a relief. I thought you were taking the night off. No, you know, it's one of those things where I never know when I'm going to come on live. Like every other college football YouTube channel, they have a really good, consistent schedule to them. But I just can't do it. I got too many things going on. Plus, you know, when there's breaking stories, if I'm available, I like to leap on here. So you always got to keep your head on a swivel. So sometimes it takes a while for the storm, for the Flugarian storm to gather. It takes a while. Sometimes it happens early in the morning. But sometimes it takes a while for that Flugarian storm to gather up the big clouds hanging over everybody, and then it pours as we do the live show. Our Web is in the house. Lee Go Gators. To Mazda. Jeremy Nork. The Tough Tony. We're going to go through that. We're going to spend a couple minutes on that, Tony. Anthony Manzano is in the house. Kirk Bender. Friends, call me Sean and Coy. Holy smokes. Coy's in the house with another gift membership. His generosity is unbelievable. Once again, Coy, you are hereby knighted Cloak and Dagger. Thank you so much. And Michael Uten, you have been gifted a membership by Coy. So you are hereby knighted Cloak and Dagger. Appreciate it, Coy. Congratulations, Mr. Uten. Kenneth Evans is in the house. Mick Stevens, TCU Horned Frogs. Movie Time Blues. Okay. Mike Suggett. Seth 78. If North Carolina BOG doesn't allow North Carolina to leave, it will devalue North Carolina because the SEC and the Big Ten can just use their cash to take UNC's coaches and players with NIL. Great point. But they did all this for a reason. They did all of this to be this proactive for a reason. And it's gonna, and again, like everything else, it's gonna come down to negotiations, leverage. You make a great point, Seth, and we will get to that. Almighty Finn is in the house. RF Mac is braced for impact. Who else is in here? For the Canes, let's go Canes. Bruce Lyon Holt. Auburn is in the house. Holy smokes. Glenn Lumen, Glenn from the Philippines. Glenn, I'm so happy you're here tonight. I am so pleased, Glenn. Thank you for coming on in. Obsidian 75. They beat the gambling rap. Happy Friday. Holy smokes. Adam Adam, thanks for coming on in. I appreciate it. What I missed? You missed absolutely nothing. You missed absolutely nothing. We really haven't hit on anything yet. David M is in here. RX is in the house. Justin Lucas. The president even said Wake Forest and Duke. Justin, I love you, man. I love you. But when you're on the Board of Governors, or you get assigned to the Board of Governors, your interest lies within the 16 universities. Of course, they don't want to see Wake Forest and Duke go by the wayside. Nobody does in the state of North Carolina. But when it comes to the grind of the Board of Governors, their interest, what they're looking out for, unfortunately, it's not Wake Forest and Duke. This was a North Carolina State power play. Crab Cakes and Football is in the house. Kevin Lee is in the house. John Evans from Dallas County, Texas, who's peeping in my window. Holy smokes. David M. Okay. All right. Let's get to this. We got some stories to cover. Then we'll get to North Carolina. First of all, let me steer the hornet's nest just a little bit. Just a little bit. Now, again, we're not going to talk much about this tonight. Unless you call and you want to talk about it. Or you want to do a super chat. You want to talk about it. But the monologue, we're not going to talk much about the monologue when it comes to the college football playoffs and what it's going to look like for 2026 and beyond. Because we're going to be talking about it this weekend. We're going to be talking about it all next week. The virtual meetings are going on all next week. We're going to be having all types of reports, Cloak and Dagger information. So we're only going to touch on it a little bit tonight. I put out a post. And this next version that this is not what I want, but I think this is what they're going to be talking about if they're not already talking about it. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. But I'm going to show you what it is. Nobody liked it when I put it up on my X account. This is what I put out. I'm waiting for the next version to gain socialization. Remember that word socialization is being used in these reports. 4 big auto bids for the Big Ten, 4 SEC auto bids, 2 Big 12 auto bids, 2 ACC auto bids, 1 G5 highest ranked champ, 3 at-large bids. The 4 top-ranked conference champs get seeded 1 through 4. The 12 remaining teams seeded per select committee rankings, seeds 1 through 8 have home games in the first round. Now, you can go ahead. I don't want to show people's comments. You can go ahead, though, on your own and look at my X account and look at the comments. And I wish I could, I'm not going to show you the direct messages I got. But this scenario was attacked from every angle, right? The Big 12 and the ACC people did not like this because how are we back to 4 automatic for the Big and the SEC? The Big 10 and the SEC comments, you can read them. People are saying you can't give 2 automatic bids for the Big 12 to ACC. Back and forth, back and forth. This is what I believe at the moment. Well, actually, about 5 days ago. The Big 10 and the SEC wanted 4 auto bids. 4 auto bids. But they're willing to negotiate to go down to 3. 3 each. 3, 3, 2, 2, 1. But you saw what was part of the negotiations. In return to go down 3, they wanted a first round bye in the playoffs. An exclusive rights, first round games, Big 10 and the SEC. Well, I got to tell you, that ain't going to fly. That is not going to fly. So in this scenario, 1 through 4, there is no buys. There is no buys. The top 4 seeds are the 4 top-ranked conference champions by the select committee. Take the 4 top-ranked champs. And it's 1 versus 16, 2 versus 15, 3 versus 14. The 12 remaining teams are seeded per the select committee rankings. So the highest ranked G5 champion probably finishes 16. Sometimes maybe a little bit higher than that. But then you have an incentive for the top seed. You're probably going to be playing the G5 champion. And you have home games 1 through 8. Seed have the home games. Now, a lot of Big 12 and ACC people, fans of schools, they say no way. It's got to be 3-3-2-2, or it's got to be 2-2-2-2. I just don't believe the Big 10 and the SEC are doing all of this to have a 2-2-2-2. That's not what they're this is their power move. And I think they went overboard with the exclusive rights of a first round bye. But I think they're going to get back to the 4-4. Because the Big 12 and the ACC are not going to go with the first round exclusive rights bye. I really think it's going to be 4-4-2-2, or it's going to be 3-3-2-2. But the Big 10 and the SEC are going to take an even a bigger slice of the overall revenue pie, the percentages. And I think eventually the Big 12 and the ACC are going to balk at that. At some point, the Big 10 and the SEC are going to get something on this. And I think this is something that the Big 12 and the ACC very well could acquiesce to versus other options. One of those options being the nuclear option. Everything blows up. Everybody walks away. Again, I'm getting attacked from all angles on this. Every angle. So when that happens, maybe I'm on something, or maybe I'm on to something, right? I'm sure 90%, 95% of the chat disagrees with this. But you're disagreeing from all different angles. There's no way the Big 12 would accept this. There's no way the Big 10 would accept this. There's no way the SEC is going to accept this. I don't think the Big Ten and the SEC, now maybe we're going to find out that I'm wrong, but I don't think, from what we were told 5-6 days ago, remember when we said that the Big Ten were digging in the heels for the automatic qualifiers, multiple ones? If they go 3-3-2-2, which might be the case, Big Ten and the SEC are going to make up for it, because they're going to make up for it with taking a huge, big part of the pie. And I don't think the Big 12 and the ACC wants that. Anyways, that is what I think we're going to hear next. I'm just shooting that out there. I'm taking my shot. No buys. No buys. Four top ranked conference champion after the championship games get the 1 through 4 seed. 12 remaining seeds seeded per. So, later on in the show, you can let me have it. You can let me have it for that. But that's where I think we're going to hear next. Crab cakes in football. SEC, Big Ten get 4 every year anyways. Yes. And this is why some of the SEC and the Big Ten fans don't even like this, because they're going to get them anyways. But this is what Tony Petitti's media partners want. Tony Petitti understands that. But they want assured, they want to know that they're getting 4 in. They want that conference race to be the top 4 to be dramatic. They want eyes on the conference games in November. They want, if the Big Ten has a season where it's all scrunched up in the middle, let's say you have 2 teams that are 12-0 and everyone else is stacked, and you got 2 teams. Let's say with a month to go, you have 2 Big Ten teams that are running away with it. The rest of them are bunched together, and you have 2 teams at the bottom. Tony Petitti, the media partners, still want eyes on the Big Ten content because the partners are putting out so much money. They want there to be excitement in the race for that 3rd spot, for that 4th spot. And the SEC wants the same thing. So they're going to get these automatic qualifiers, or they're going to make sure that they get this humongous percentage of the pie. Or they're going to get that first round bye, which exclusive rights to it, and they're not going to get that. They're going to get one of these things, or the whole thing's going to blow up. I'm just telling you, I'm just shooting it to you straight. Thank you, Crab Cakes and Football, for the super chat. I appreciate it. If you do the modeling, yes. Almost every year, the SEC and the Big Ten, yes, they would get it. But they want the assurance that they'll have 4 qualifying each for their media partners, because they're shelling out such a high number, such a big number out there. Big conference. They want intrigue. They want intrigue in those conference games. They want to make sure of that. And this is the one way to make sure of that. Okay. Let's get to some other comments on that. On my what I believe is going to be the next socialization idea. Balloon testing ideas. RX. Steve O just found out you're live. We are live. We are live. Okay, let's get to some of the other stories here, and then we'll get to North Carolina State situation. Let's see here. Where are we? Ross Dellinger, after meeting this week, college leaders are expected to finalize on Friday recommendations to adopt the long-expected player-to-coach helmet communication system. Also to use tablets on the sideline and at halftime, and a 2-minute warning for the first half and at the end of the game. Sources tell Yahoo Sports, and everybody else confirmed it. Brett McMurphy. NCAA Football Rule Committee proposes adding the 2-minute warning timeouts in second and fourth quarter and allowing schools to use coach-to-player communications through helmet to one player on the field. So the quarterback and somebody on the defense, somebody, a linebacker or somebody in the secondary, probably a safety, right? One player on the field is going to have this communication. So you're still going to have hand signals. You're still going to have yelling, but it's going to be from the one person on the field to the rest of the players on the field. If on the defensive side of the field. Anyways, the communication from coach to player would be turned off with 15 seconds left on the play clock or when the ball is snapped, whichever comes first. Now, in college football, usually that ball is snapped before the 15-second clock, play clock, except for a few of those teams, the academy schools, and of course, Minnesota. Fleck likes to run that down to 1 or 2 seconds on the play clock. But anyways, most of the time, that communication is going to snap off when the play has started. Dennis Dodd, later in the day, Dennis Dodd says, sitting on the Rules Committee Zoom right now, the expectation is that most of FBS will use helmet communications. However, it is permissive, optional, and does not have to be a mutual agreement. One team can use it, the opponent does not have to. So you can be a team with this helmet communication from coach to player, and you can be playing against a team that does not have that communication going on. Other news, Dartmouth, National Labor Relations Board regional director just denied Dartmouth's motion to reopen the basketball player case. This makes it more likely the players' vote to unionize next Tuesday will go as planned. We're going to be covering that story. Now, that's a basketball story for right now, but it's going to spread to football, of course, in the Ivy League, and it's going to probably spread everywhere else. Eventually, we have the big UNLRB versus USC case going on, versus USC versus NCAA versus Pac-12 going on. We're going to hear more about that real soon. So we'll be covering this next week. We covered the Fleck, the UCLA. I gave everybody a peek around the corner even before Chip Kelly went off to be an offensive coordinator somewhere and eventually landed at Ohio State. We told you all that PJ Fleck's name was going to come up because of interest between UCLA and Fleck of a couple years ago. Brett McMurphy said today that Minnesota's PJ Fleck receives contract amendment with increased salary pool for assistant coaches and staff, and additional annual bonus for Fleck. I put out a post saying, couple thoughts. Fleck says thank you to UCLA. Number 2, much needed increase in staff pay as Gophers were near the bottom of the Big Ten in total salary football pool. And they're still near the bottom. Ryan Burns of Minnesota 247 said, before this, Minnesota's assistant pool's salary pool was 17th out of 18 Big Ten schools. Now it's 15 out of 18. So it improved a little bit, not much. And then Zach Barnett had an article out there on Football Scoop saying that Mark Coyle and Fleck were in heavy discussions that Friday and that Saturday to try to get something done because Coyle knew that UCLA had targeted Fleck. And to be honest with you, we knew that Fleck was in Mexico, and Martin Jamon was going to go to Mexico and they were going to have a big meeting. I did not put that Mexico information out there. We knew it. Somebody else did. I got really upset about that. That information was not supposed to leak for reasons I don't want to get into, but well, I've got into a little bit, but I'm not going to go any further with it. So this was all going on. Zach Barnett put out a column. You can read it after the live show. But yes, Fleck UCLA was a serious deal, but Minnesota brought a little bit more money, and UCLA just doesn't have the resources at this point in time. And then finally, Ross Dellinger, according to a letter from the NCAA president, Charlie Baker, sent to member schools, the NCAA is pausing and not opening new investigations involving third parties collectives for NIL-related activities as a response to the Tennessee-Virginia lawsuit. Again, we're not going to go into that story. You guys all know what's going on there. There's just not going to be any enforcement of anything. You can induce using any tool that you want to use to induce a high school player. There is no rules right now. It's the wild, wild west. And we're not going to get rules. We're not going to be able to get enforceable rules in the eyes of the court until these players are represented, and there's a collective bargaining agreement amongst all parties. So, until that happens, it's just the wild, wild west. Okay, here we go. We know the story. We've been covering this like nobody's business. North Carolina, Board of Governors, we were highlighting it. We had a lot of shows on it. It's official now. So now, why am I bringing it up again tonight? Why did we title the show the way we did? Cloak and Dagger, Wolfpacks in the state of North Carolina. Because it was drilled into me today that even though North Carolina and North Carolina State are not attached to the hip, this does not make them attached to the hip. It was still a power move. By those who have interest of North Carolina State. No question. They weren't this proactive. Remember, they started this months ago. This was proposed in October of 2023. They've been working on this. They got way ahead of this because there is big power interest in this. The growing power of Raleigh, North Carolina, which is the home of North Carolina State Wolfpack, politically, in the legislature, and everywhere. The Board of Governors. Before I start this story, I want to repeat what I said earlier in the monologue. Forget about the idea, the traditional idea of North Carolina calling the Big Ten and the SEC and negotiating with those two conferences. That's not happening. That ain't happening. They're just going to be the ones that deliver the papers, the offer. Digitally, they're going to meet with the Board of Governors. They're just the middle guy now. The Board of Governors have all the power. And they got that power for a reason. Not to technically tie North Carolina State and North Carolina at the hip, but to exact the most leverage, power, influence that they possibly can for the betterment of North Carolina State. This was a power move. Because they've got the power. They're not the bigger brand, but they've got the power. They weren't going to have happen what happened in California, between California, Berkeley, and UCLA. They got way out ahead of this. Way out. We're still maybe a year away from North Carolina being a player. Remember the last time we talked about the Holy Smokes Theater, the last update? We had North Carolina State all the way up in the first row with Miami and Florida, while North Carolina and Clemson at the edge of the stage. This is just more of that. They're definitely in the first row, the Wolfpack in the Holy Smokes Theater. Let me get to this. Donnie McNerney, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate your continued generosity to the show. Let's get to it. It's a long article. I'm going to get through it as fast as I can. But there is one PATC money shot in this article that I would ask you to just keep it in the back of your mind. Let it marinate. UNC system has a say in conference moves, but the college sports machine is unstoppable. By Andrew Carter, News and Observer. We provide a link in the description. You can read the whole article. The policy change that might help preserve the ACC and college athletics as they've been known in North Carolina past Thursday, yesterday morning, without fanfare or discussion, in a 17th floor boardroom in downtown Raleigh, with a portrait of Bill Friday on the wall just outside the back door. It was fair to wonder what Friday might think of, well, just about everything in college sports these days. Almost 12 years after his death at 92, Friday remains synonymous with higher education in North Carolina. He served as the University of North Carolina system president for 30 years, beginning in 1956, and transformed it into a national model. He became, too, one of the nation's foremost critics of big-time college athletics. Perhaps Friday might have been proud on Thursday after the UNC System Board of Governors approved a policy change that essentially gives the board, its president, the power to stop state universities from moving to a different athletic conference. Perhaps Friday would have wondered instead whether it's worth the effort to preserve anything about college sports as they are today. Friday often questioned their relationship to the educational mission of the universities. He bemoaned the influence of television and commercialism. He helped found in 1989, 3 years after his retirement from the UNC system, the Knight Commission on Intercollegiate Athletics, which began with the hope of bringing major reform to college sports. So much for that. Friday tried, at least. NCAA musical chairs. The college athletics world that Friday knew has grown only more unruly and unrecognizable. Some of the mayhem that's surrounding the combination of NIL and transfer portal in particular is attributable to changes that were long overdue, but ones the NCAA implemented in typical fashion without vision or much of a plan. Then there's major conference realignment. In the craven pursuit of more. Some of the wealthiest conferences and wealthiest schools and wealthiest administrators and college boards have decided that they don't have enough. Their pursuit of more and more will never be enough, and has led to the destruction of the Pac-12 and a dreadful comical game of realignment musical chairs. It's why Texas and Oklahoma are leaving the Big 12 for the SEC. It's why the Big 12 has become an old mismatch of institutions bonded by their common desire to keep a seat at the table. It's why USC and UCLA and Washington and Oregon are headed to the Chicago-based Big 10. And why the ACC, after an expansion of desperation, awaits the arrival of Cal, Stanford, and SMU. There was some comedic juxtaposition Thursday, when hours after it officially became more difficult for North Carolina universities to switch conferences, the ACC unveiled its 2024, get this, 2024 25 conference matchups in men's basketball. In the very old days of the ACC, such a thing would have been unnecessary because each ACC team played each other conference team twice. Now, though, with the ACC becoming an 18-team league in basketball, figuring out who will play can be confusing, unwieldy. Thus, the conference released on Thursday of a matchup grid, which underscored, like few things can, the absurdity of where we're at in college sports. Now, this is startling. It revealed several gems. That while North Carolina State and Duke won't play twice, North Carolina State and Cal will. That while Virginia won't play any North Carolina school twice, it can look forward to 2 games against SMU. That Syracuse must have made the ACC angry. Was it Jim Boeheim? Quips about Greensboro? Given the Orange will go on the road. The Orange will go on the road to SMU, Cal, and Stanford, as well as Miami, Florida State, and Clemson. The landscape has completely changed. Whether its leaders want to admit it publicly or not, the insanity of realignment is part of the reason, undoubtedly, why the UNC system, the governing body, the state universities have given itself some authority over conference affiliation. It's more than that. It's more than that. We're going to get to it at the end of the article. It's this. When you're moving power from one body to the next, something is pushing that, and it's the power in the state of North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina, Wolfpack, Cloak, and Dagger. I can understand why people are scoffing at this. We've been talking about it for 6 months, but I can understand because people think of North Carolina as the bigger brand, and they are. They're the more valuable brand. Yes, they are. But the power in the Board of Governors is in the hands of North Carolina State. We're going to get to that in a bit. Schools and leagues have proven they can't help themselves. If there's more television money to be made, there's no limit to what they're willing to accept, no reluctance to leave behind the history and relationships that allowed their rise to prominence in the first place. We've got several of our schools that are in the same conferences, and a move could affect those conferences, Ramsey said, but I don't know what we would be concerned necessarily about globally, how it affects the conference or how it affects anybody other than other schools. I believe that we've got 16 universities that are responsible for and responsible to, and it's to our board's mission to ensure that they're safe and that they do the right things going forward. Indeed, said Hans, who was listening to Ramsey, it's our responsibility. Now, you're going to hear about who Ramsey is here. You're going to hear about who Ramsey is. We've talked about him. Both Hans and Ramsey has far more important responsibility, but college athletics is a part of the crucial fabric of North Carolina in a way that isn't most states. There is all the history and prestige here in college basketball, and also the proximity of the 4 ACC schools, with 3 of them separated only by county lines, different colors, and short drives. Ramsey is the chairman of the Board of Governors. He is the major booster of North Carolina State. In the weeks and months before the Board of Governors approved the policy change that gives UNC system more of a say in conference realignment, an obvious and expected perception emerged while the measure was under consideration, that it was really a way to tie North Carolina and North Carolina State together and ensure they remain in the same league. Not quite. Not quite. There was a perception out there. An expected perception, according to Andrew Carter, News and Observer, that it was really a way to tie North Carolina and North Carolina State together. The universities were both founding fathers of the ACC in 1953. They were founding members to one of the Southern Conference in 1921. Among the other schools that founded the Southern Conference were Bama and Auburn, which left to help to start the SEC, and Washington and Lee, which eventually gave up major college sports and is now an NCAA Division III school. The only constant in college athletics has been the kind of change with conference rising and falling in schools coming and going. Though it has been a long time since any university de-emphasized sports the way Washington and Lee did, or the University of Chicago before that, it's fair to wonder whether that's even possible now with schools committed to the chase. All these schools, most of these schools have huge debts that they service year in and year out with their athletic revenue. For years, the most efficient way to evaluate a school's commitment to the chase was to look at its facilities. It was to consider the palatial football stadiums or the shiny locker rooms, or in the case of Clemson, not that long ago, the lazy river or barbershop or putt-putt course of a football facility. Now, though, schools don't want to reside in the healthiest neighborhood, but they want to reside in the richest neighborhood. And thus, the rush to join the Big Ten or the SEC. And the reason behind Florida State's attempt to litigate its way out of the ACC as soon as possible. We will remain nimble. The ACC, meanwhile, is hardly free of blame. The conference abandoned its own roots in moving its headquarters to Charlotte last summer, and long before that, its pillaging of the old Big East set in motion a lot of what continues today. Of the 8 schools who joined the league in 1953, 6 remain. Next year, they represent 1/3 of the conference membership. There will be as many ACC schools in California as there are in Virginia, and the uncertainty surrounding the league will endure as long as there's some kind of finality, whether in mass defections or some kind of reaffirmed stability. UNC, North Carolina State, like every other school outside of the Big Ten and the SEC, have been left to navigate the chaos. The UNC system's latest policy change adds another layer to any move they'd make or try to make. Hans, the system president, noted how both schools were on opposite sides of the ACC's vote to expand. UNC opposed, North Carolina State in favor eventually. There's no binding here, he said. There is no binding here. Surely, though, we are all partial to the traditional Tobacco Road rivalries with Carolina State, and yes, even Duke and Wake in that regard. And I hope they'll continue. Now, here is the PATC money shot, and here is the last part of the article. Here is the PATC money shot. And this verbiage was told to us today. Remember, I told you about this 20-minute conversation at the start of the show. This verbiage is going to be used over and over and over again. Now, no one can fully predict the future of college athletics, and as thus, we will remain nimble. But the foundational principle here is protecting the students and the families and the taxpayers against decisions which have significant downstream financial impacts. I don't know what you need to do. Go onto your computer, print the last page of the article, the third to the last paragraph, cut that out, and put it up on your bathroom wall every morning when you're doing your business. Look at that paragraph, because we're going to see that again. And I was told this before this article came out. I'm going to circle back to that. Let me finish this article. It was not the first time that a UNC system president had tried to assert power and control over the unintended consequences inherent throughout college athletics. Friday, who was the UNC president, system president for 30 years, fought the good fight for decades and warned of the corrupting influence of television and money. Indeed, that fight became part of his legacy, just as the forces he opposed grew more impossible to stop. Okay. The money shot. I cannot emphasize this enough. I'm going to read it one more time, and then we're going to break this thing down. Third to the last paragraph, at the top of your screen. Remember, this is Peter Hans, the UNC system president. This is the motivation. Don't forget about what, okay, we're going to read this, but it's also what he did not say. What he did not say. But this is what he said, and then we'll get to the other part next. Now, no one can fully predict the future of college athletics, and as thus we will remain nimble. But the foundational principle here in having the board gain this power, the board of governors gaining this power, the principle here is protecting the students and the families and the taxpayers against decisions which will have significant downstream financial impacts. Taxpayers, significant downstream financial impacts. This is, it isn't, what Peter Hans did not say is, one of the foundational principles here is to make sure that when one of our universities go to another conference, if that happens, that they get the best deal, that it's the best for the students, it's the best for the student athletes. None of that hyping of that, none of that. It was the other way, right? Remember, the Board of Governors, it is stacked with North Carolina state influence. And so is the legislature, the Congress, the State House of North Carolina. But the foundational principle here is protecting the students, families, and taxpayers against decisions which have significant downstream financial impacts, i.e. North Carolina State. Because that's not about North Carolina. That's not about North Carolina. This whole thing is not about North Carolina. Shifting the power from North Carolina's Board of Regents to the Board of Governors is not about North Carolina. It isn't. I know people are sanitizing this, trying to clean it up. They're not attached to the hip, and they're not. I mean, look, the difference is this. Okay, we're gonna do some pretending here. Florida State, they get a settlement, they get an offer, they get a money, they get a certain something that they can work with. The courts go at least enough in Florida State's favor to where there's a settlement between Florida State and the ACC. Florida State gets out. North Carolina is next. North Carolina is going to be calling the SEC and the Big Ten. We know that North Carolina's Board of Regents lean to the SEC. They do. It used to be the other way. It used to be to the Big Ten. Mike Gusowich was a Big Ten. He would have been a Big Ten supporter. He went off to Michigan State. The Board of Regents, other people, we said this months ago, other people have reported this now. We gave you the peak, the lay of the land at North Carolina. It doesn't necessarily mean North Carolina is going to the SEC, but the lay of the land, North Carolina, internal politics, lean SEC. The Board of Governors, they lean, sure, SEC. They also lean North Carolina State. So North Carolina is going to be calling the SEC. They're going to be calling the Big Ten. The Board of Governors is going to get this financial plan from North Carolina. Probably both financial plans, Big Ten and SEC. The SEC now knows, and the Big Ten, but let's just focus on the SEC. The SEC now knows that they're dealing with the Board of Governors. They're not even dealing with North Carolina anymore. It's the system president that has to agree to whatever, and it was vague enough, right? This is so vague. Financial plan. They can come up with any reasons to say, no, this ain't good enough. SEC is not negotiating with North Carolina. The SEC is not negotiating with UNC Chapel Hill. The SEC is negotiating with the whole state of North Carolina. That's what's going on here. So, if the SEC goes, here's our offer to North Carolina. No way we can take North Carolina State with us. Let's say the Big Ten says, this is our offer to North Carolina. There's no way that we can take North Carolina State with us. You know, then North Carolina is going to go. But there's going to be a cost to this. It's going to be a cost, and it's probably going to be a pretty big one. North Carolina State, again, get right back to that last article, that last third paragraph to the end. Protecting the students, families, taxpayers against decisions would have significant downstream financial impacts. This is not about the impact of Charlotte or any other public institutions. This is about North Carolina State. The powers that be, North Carolina State's got a whole lot of power in that state, and it's growing. They are going to protect North Carolina State. If they can't get them in the same conference as North Carolina, they are going to extract a cost from UNC, from the SEC. So they're not attached to the hip, but this is a power move by North Carolina, the people with interest of North Carolina State. This is possibly, quite possibly, probably a UCLA, California, Berkeley situation. But North Carolina State has been absolutely proactive, or people holding the interest of North Carolina State. Now, here's the thing though. Here is the key to this. Here's the key. Not only is the powers that support North Carolina State, not only were they proactive, much more proactive than California, Berkeley, but the UCLA thing was a done deal with the Big Ten. This is all happening before. So they're using the leverage of The SEC is not going to be knowing what's going on between the Big Ten and North Carolina. And Big Ten's not going to be knowing let me back up. I said that incorrectly. The Big Ten is not going to know what's going on between the SEC and the North Carolina Board of Governors. And the SEC is not going to know what's going on between the Big Ten and the North Carolina Board of Governors. So there's even more leverage. There's even more opportunities for North Carolina State, even though maybe the odds aren't all that great to be included in a deal with North Carolina. Whoever offers the best deal, not to North Carolina. Whoever offers the best deal to the North Carolina Board of Governors. Whoever offers the best deal to the North Carolina Board of Governors, not UNC. We have to rethink this. And we know that the SEC is UNC's target number 1, target number 2, target number 3 of the SEC. That's their big target. And North Carolina Board of Governors are going to be playing both the Big Ten and the SEC. This has been a deliberate power move, not by accident. It's been going on for months. It's become official yesterday. People should not sanitize this. Officially, are they tied at the hip? North Carolina and North Carolina State? No, they're not. But North Carolina State has more power than most people, I believe, understands in this situation. So, there it is. There's the article. It's information we got here at Peek Around the Corner. To add to it, we've gone through a bunch of stories. We'll get to your comments. We're going to open up the phone lines right now. We have a lot of people in the chat. Holy smokes. Che Chapman, thank you so much for becoming an early peak member. I know you tried to be one yesterday. Things went pear-shaped. But I'm glad you were able to do it today. Jay Chapman, congratulations. Thank you very much for becoming an early peak Cloak and Dagger. You, sir, are officially knighted. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. Okay, go check out those early peak episodes from members only. We're going to open up the phone lines. It's March 1st. This is going to be a very busy month. Last month was busy. This month is going to be crazy. Next week, we're going to have the CFP. It's just going to be nuts. It's going to be nuts. So buckle up. Hopefully it's not going to be a roller coaster. I think it maybe is at the start of the week. It's definitely going to be a roller coaster. Buckle up. Let's see what gets done. We're going to be here. We're going to be covering every inch of it. Then we got the March 22nd case. March 22nd. Florida State and North Carolina. Florida State and the ACC. We're going to have all that stuff leading up to it. Then we're going to get in. We still haven't talked about my Big Ten rankings. We're going to be making some way too early predictions in the conference race. We're in March. Spring practices are starting. And we're going to be getting reports of how those spring practices are, all these transfer players, these transfer quarterbacks. March is going to be a blast. So stick with us here at Peek Around the Corner. If you're new to the channel, or if you haven't done so yet, please hit the subscribe button, open up your notifications, and March is going to be something else. Absolutely. Sean McNeely, holy smokes. Holy smokes. Thank you so much, Steven. I appreciate your incredible generosity. 5 gifted memberships, Cloak and Dagger. You here are by Cloak and Dagger United again. Holy man. Thank you, Steven. Thank you very much. Wow, let's just see who picked up those early peak memberships. Almighty Finn, John Bennett, Sample Tex, Craig Anderson, and Amy S. All 5 of you are now Cloak and Dagger United. You are members of the channel. What that means is you can go into our early peak members only episodes. We've got episodes for everybody and then episodes for early peak members, giving a little bit of Cloak and Dagger information. Thank you all. You are all now members. Holy smokes. Thank you, Steven. Let's, the phone lines are open. No, they're not. I'm sorry. Goodness gracious. My bad. Now they're open. 763-260-1333. You can yell at me about anything. This is the next version that I think is going to gain socialization. Tell me that I'm absolutely off my rockers. North Carolina State, North Carolina. The NIL, there's no guardrails. There's nothing. It's the Wild West. Dartmouth, Tuesday. They're going to start their basketball players are going to be unionized. So they're going to get representation. Give me a call, 763-260-1333.
Call from
Becky, go Huskies.
Becky, go Huskies. Holy smokes. The original, the first caller on this show of all time. Becky, the floor is yours.
Well, Greg, I'm here to yell at you about all the things that you can't control. So,
Go.
hang on to your seat.
I will. I'm hanging on.
No, it's really, like, as far as, like, the playoff goes, this is all the Power 2, and we'll just call it what it is. It's Power 2 now. They are absolutely flexing their muscles right now. And it's probably more posturing to get their way. But, you know, I mean, like, in the SEC or Big Ten, like, case, I personally think, like, no automatic qualifiers would be best for them than actually allowing automatic qualifiers. You know what I mean? Like, if you go back through everything over, like, the 4-team playoff, they have essentially all of the old playoff teams. And if, like, say, Clemson and Notre Dame and Florida State all join one of the 2 conferences, they would have all but 2. And the 2 that they wouldn't have would be TCU and Cincinnati. Like,
yeah, yes. Yeah. And so the logical way of thinking of this is why are they looking at automatic qualifiers if they're going to get 4 or 5 anyways, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the media partners are the Big Ten and ESPN, but in this particular case, the Big Ten, because they want assurances that a 3rd and a 4th will get in there. They want their eyeballs on those conference games in November. No matter what their records are, they want a year in, year out assurance that they're going to have a conference race that people are going to be having their eyes on beyond number 1 and number 2, because they're getting all this money. And it's a big conference, and it's going to expand some more.
Yeah, and I mean, it's definitely something to also protect the conference championship game, because those are going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
They're big money. They're money makers. Like, end of story. They make millions for the conference. So I get it, but man, you know, the whole AQ thing, and it's, you know, I know people are probably frustrated who are on like the outside looking in. You know, maybe like in the Big 12 or even the ACC, and obviously the Group of 5. It's like this is
Yeah.
This is where it's going. The two top conferences feel, and rightfully so right now, have all of the top watched teams, which is, sad to say, like, their thing. So it was only a matter of time before they said, look, we're the two top conferences. We want all the spots. And, those three like at-larges, that's the best shot for anybody else to get in there. Because we're going to see a team like, say, I'll just use Arizona for an example. Arizona, Utah, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State could all win the Big 12 this upcoming season, right?
Yeah. Yep.
All four could. And we're going to see scenarios like this in 2026, 2027, however, like going forward, where all of a sudden you still have 4, 5, 6 teams capable of winning that conference. And they're going to be, the Big Ten and the SEC are beating the crap out of each other. So yeah, you're going to have like multiple 10-2 teams, where the SEC and the Big Ten, they're all, they're 8-4, 9-3. And I know people will say, well, your 10-2 is not as good as our 9-3, but
yeah,
the better teams, they're already in because they got the AQ spot.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's where we're heading. Like, those three at-larges are the best chance for multiple teams from the other two conferences to get in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And obviously, like, the Pac-12, whatever that becomes, if it reforms or not, that's the independents, like Notre Dame, that's how they're going to get in.
Yep.
Like, that, that's all set up to help them out. And, I'm not sure. I think they're going to tell the independents they have to be ranked at a certain point, be considered.
Yeah.
I think, like, remember, well, not the BCS, but yeah, every time Notre Dame's been like in, like making the BCS bowl games or any of that stuff, they've had to be ranked at a certain point. Like, they have to be on the New Year's Six games. They have to be ranked at like whatever it is, like 12 or 13. I don't know what the number is off the top of my head, but they have to be ranked at a certain point to be considered.
Yeah.
Or like to get like, and essentially it gives them an automatic like New Year's
Yeah.
Six bowl.
Yeah, I hear like top 14 or something. Like,
Like, but that's where we're heading, and that's the only way to keep it like semi-fair. I don't see a situation in which we have 7 SEC teams making the playoffs. I don't see that. There weren't even 7 this year that would have made it. And it was the Big Ten and the SEC pretty much stacked the top 15.
RX in the chat says because they know the Big Ten and the SEC brands will have 9-3 and 8-4 records. The records, no question about it. The records, you're not going to have 3 teams at 11-1 in the Big Ten and the SEC. So you're going to have 9-3 and 8-4 records, and those conferences do not want to have to be subjected to the committee. They don't want all the eyeballs on the committee. They want the eyeballs on their conference races. They want the fans to know that a team who still has a shot for the 4th place in the SEC, their conference games are going to be worth a lot to watch. They want the eyeballs on that. So that's, and Becky's correct. I completely understand as much as I possibly could the frustrations of the ACC and the Big 12 and the G5. I'm the one that's been pounding the table for G5 access. They keep it. It's best for the game. I have been raked over the coals for it, but I believe it's best for everybody. I believe it's best. So I get it. I mean, I get it. But I also get that the Big Ten and the SEC are going to flex their muscle. You stealing another Becky phrase, because this is why they grew. This is why the big brands of those conferences grew these conferences the way they are. This is why the middle schools, the bottom schools of these conferences, That's why they acquiesced. That's why they said, let's do it for more money, more influence, more power. However, I do think Petiti and Sankey jumped the shark on exclusive first-round buys. But go ahead, Becky.
No,
floor's yours.
I agree totally on the first-round buy thing. I'm like, I think they jumped ship on that. I don't even think it's, I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's even a necessary thing. I think the way the two conferences are set up, they will always have the 1 and 2 seeds, even over an undefeated ACC or Big 12, because like we've already said, their 11 and 1 or 12 and 1 is going to be better than their 13 and 0. Like it's just going to be what it is. So and that's why they loaded up, and that's why they're playing these games that they're playing, is so that they could have those situations. I personally don't think it's a necessary thing.
Yeah.
I don't buy it as being necessary.
Yeah.
I will say this, as far as the North Carolina and North Carolina State thing, that is 100% North Carolina State, boosters or whatever. Somebody's looking out for North Carolina State in the state of North Carolina to basically say that, they could do it. This is the same. Remember, Greg, this is the exact same thing we heard about UCLA and Cal, because they are operated by the same board of regents themselves. So the California system, the talk was we could nix this whenever we wanted, and you have, you either take both or you don't take one. That is a thing that could be a thing. You could see, if North Carolina State doesn't go along, we could see, a North Carolina, tax. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's gonna be a tax. That's where it's gonna go. They're gonna be paying $9-10 million a year to North Carolina State, probably.
Yeah, they're gonna exact the cost on it, and so if SEC takes North Carolina, it ain't gonna be the North Carolina that they would like to have, unless they include North Carolina State. Same with the Big Ten. So there is Board of Governors, North Carolina. They have the power, and they do have some leverage in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, Steve-O in the chat just asked me if Alabama's 12 and 1 was better than FSU's 13 and 0, and I would say not this year, but I would say, next year, Alabama has Texas, Oklahoma. Alabama will eventually have a schedule that has Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Tennessee, Auburn, and potentially Florida, all on that schedule. And that's not including anything in the non-conference. Mm-hmm. They could be playing a non-conference game against USC or an Ohio State. This is what we're saying. Everything's coming down. I can say Washington in the future, 2028 or 29, has Tennessee on the schedule. Mm-hmm. So you could see you could see an actual series of games where Washington's playing Nebraska, Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, Penn State, Oregon, USC. If they run that gauntlet with a win over, an 8-4 or 9-3 Tennessee squad that beats, say, maybe the SEC champ in Georgia, it looks better. Yep. That's why they did this. Yep. Specifically why they did it. Load up, make
Becky,
it great.
I got a break.
You gotta go.
What?
Love you, Greg.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Becky. I got a breaking new article from ESPN here.
You do it.
You got it.
I'm
Thanks,
gonna be
Beck. Appreciate it. Great call, Becky Husky. I got the phone off the hook. We got to hit this article. So I took the phone off the hook. I'll let you know when the phone is back on the hook. When the phone lines are back open, I do apologize. But we do have an article break in here. Big 12 and ACC coaches not keen on the proposed CFP buys for the SEC and the Big Ten. Dave Wilson, article released now. The college football playoff hasn't unveiled its first 12-team field yet, but discussions on the 14-team competition beginning in 2026 are already raising eyebrows among the Big 12 and ACC coaches. In the 12-team playoff structure, the 5 highest-ranked conference champions, but multiple sources told ESPN that one 14-team model that's currently being considered includes provisions for the SEC and the Big Ten to get 3 automatic qualifiers each and the only 2 byes for the conference champions. Here is the PATC money shot of the article. Automatic first-round byes for the Big Ten and the SEC is like the NFL saying that the Cowboys get a first-round bye since they have more fans than the Bengals. TCU coach Sonny Dykes told ESPN. How preposterous is that? I couldn't agree more. There's something so... The Cowboys get a first-round bye since they have more fans than the Bengals. How preposterous is that? That's a pretty good analogy. Dykes, 2022 Horned Frogs, the Big 12 runner-up, beat Big Ten champion Michigan in the CFP semifinal at the Fiesta Bowl. Under this proposal, Michigan would have had a bye as the league's champion. Woo! Yes, they would have. Let me see if there's... Coaches don't have the power to change the format. Their feedback, though, is part of the process, along with that of athletic directors and university presidents. Sources have cautioned that nothing is done yet, but several coaches told ESPN they aren't fans of this new proposal. That doesn't surprise me. There's just no way that version is passing. So ask yourself, well, let's finish the article. A playoff format that guarantees a first-round bye to any team, division, or conference before the season starts is unheard of in any sport as far as I'm aware. Oklahoma State coach Mike Gundy said Friday. Based on the premise proposed, a team could go undefeated, ranked number 1 in the country, and still not receive a first-round bye because teams were awarded one before the season even began. Yes. I was so hot during a live show yesterday. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. It jumped the shark, man. It just... A source told ESPN this week that balancing the desires of the power wielded by the SEC and the Big Ten with their combined 34 teams is a delicate juggling act. The balance in the room is how to recognize the contributions of the Big Ten and the SEC while also being fair and collaborative to the collective room. We've already went through the percentages. I feel the 4 conference champs should be treated equally and all should have a first round bye. North Carolina coach Matt Brown told ESPN, it's hard to be a champion, so it does matter. Gundy said the solution is simple. We need to let teams decide it on the field and reward those who are most deserving. Gundy said. Heather Dinich contributed. Dave Wilson wrote it. ESPN. Wow. Those were great analogies. Canes all day. Pete Thamel. Who no doubt talks with those in the know, no question. SEC's top 4 targets, UNC plus Virginia, Florida State plus Clemson, worth keeping in mind as the ACC implosion nears. Absolutely correct, Canes all day. You got that right. Thank you for the super chat. Thanks again for your incredible generosity. Yep, no question about it. We haven't heard much from Virginia. Virginia's president is the co-chair. He's very, very friendly with Jim Phillips. Keep that in mind as well. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. John Teal, thank you so much for this super... Canes All Day, thank you so much for the super chat. John Teal, if the SEC gets North Carolina State, Virginia, and Clemson, and the Big Ten eats Florida State, Miami, North Dakota, Georgia Tech, woo! Does the ACC still have 2 automatic bids after the backfield? Of course, no, they won't. No. There's no way they would. And who knows if they're going to have 2 automatic bids anyway, but no, they would not. And we'll see how the governance structure is, see how easy it is to change the rules on the college football playoffs in the years ahead. That's another big aspect to all of this next week. The governance structure. They got to vote on that as well. John Teal, thank you so much for your generosity once again to the channel. Thank you for the super chat. Getting back to the ESPN article, and let me open up the phone lines here. Phone lines is now open again, 763-260-1333. Matt Brown, top 4 champions, should have a bye in the first round. One of the many reasons why I love the format that we have going in 24 and 25. I love it. I love it. I love it. I don't want to change it. The problem is that most likely the Big Ten and the SEC and potentially the Big 12 are going to expand again. And the 12 team won't work for them.
Call from
BJ.
BJ, thanks for calling, sir. The floor is yours.
What's up, Greg? Thanks for having me. I want to say a few things before we get to the this new ESPN article.
Yeah.
I get called a Big 12 hater all the time, but I'm just, I'm biased and I'm just giving, my opinion. I think I want automatic buys as just a ploy to get 4 teams. I think I mentioned this to you earlier, that I think both conferences, being the Big Ten and SEC, just want 4 teams in, right? And so they throw something out there just to see what sticks. But ultimately, they want 4 teams. And I do believe this is not concocted by Petiti or Sankey. I think ESPN wants it, right? Because they're paying all this money for the tournament. Yeah. And if you look at the TV numbers when an SEC team or a Big Ten team is in the game, it dwarfs any other conference. And so we're looking at it from a fan's perspective. But if I'm paying $1.3 billion for a tournament, no offense to NC State, Clemson, not Clemson, TCU or any, ACC or a Big 12 team not named Florida State or Clemson or Miami, I'm not going to pay $1.3 billion for that. And from a TV perspective, what is happening is par for the course and it's expected. Doesn't fit right from a sports perspective. But remember this, ESPN and the committee this last season with Florida State, it wasn't about the most deserving. You just read an article where Mike Gundy talked about the most deserving team. ESPN could care less about most deserving. They care about what's going to get the eyes. And that's why I think you have this ridiculous suggestion. But when TV people are making decisions, it's going to be ridiculous to fans who are in it for the sport.
Yeah, no, I've been, you're correct. The media partners they're the ones that are really hammering the 4 automatic qualifiers for Big Ten, and there's reasons like you just mentioned that ESPN wants the same thing. They want assurances. They want a consistent. They want something that NBC doesn't get with Notre Dame, right? NBC has a standalone contract with Notre Dame. When Notre Dame is down, the NBC loses their shirts. ESPN, and they're betting against. They don't want the valleys. They just want the peaks because they're shelling out so much money. You're absolutely correct, BJ. Go ahead, continue.
It doesn't make it right, but it's just a fact. And like when you look at the TV part of it, the eighth best team in the freaking SEC or the Big Ten is going to draw more fans than the top ranked Big 12 team, ACC team minus Florida State and Colorado, right? If you take those teams out, this is just a fact. The numbers bear that out. But I will say this, though. I do think that as far as the play on the field, I think the SEC knows if there's 3 at-large bids, a team that goes 8-3 or a 9-3 in the SEC legitimately will play 3 or 4 top 25 teams. Where if you can go 10-2 in the ACC or the Big 12, and when it comes onto the committee, they're going to look at who did you play, who did you beat. So it's already baked into the equation that an 8-4, a 9-3 SEC Big 10 team is better on paper than the runner-up for either the ACC or the Big 12. That was one of the logics for keeping Florida State out and a lot of the other teams out was you don't play anybody, right? So I don't think they have to go so hard to make it to be so blatant with it, but the numbers and the perceptions are going to bear out that those 2 conferences will get what they want, and there's nothing we can really do about it as fans. It sucks, but this is not Russia. This is capitalism. And if we live in America and capitalism is the name of the game, that's just the free market just but that has and I agree with you and I understand all the motivation, but it has to be balanced with the ingredient of competition, right? I mean, because Michigan is so much more valuable than TCU when they play each other, TCU beat Michigan just a couple years ago. Michigan doesn't start at the ball at the 50-yard line and TCU at the 25. The SEC and the Big Ten have all these advantages, resources, whatever, and kudos to them because, they built their conferences, yada, yada, yada. And I understand that. They're going to have more teams and everything. But you can't jump the shark. You cannot have the SEC and the Big Ten be assured of a first-round bye for exclusive rights to the first-round bye. That's not competition. When TCU beat Michigan, it was a beautiful thing. I think we all rejoiced.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I agree with you that it is asinine. But when I try to put on like my ESPN, I'm paying all the bills hat.
Yeah.
I think ESPN don't consider the ACC and the Big 12 on the same platform as the Big 10 and SEC for one. And then I think when you add to that, I think that Sankey and Petiti, though. Mm-hmm. I think Sankey and Petiti would rather the ACC and the Big 12 just go away because I looked at this the other day. The last time a Big 12 team, and the new Big 12 team, won a championship, NCAA football championship, was Colorado in 1990, right? Mm-hmm. If you take away Florida State and Clemson and Miami, all of the championships are in the SEC and or the Big Ten. And I think from a business perspective, I think that's all they care about. You know what I mean? But I think the way they're going about it is completely wrong. But ultimately, I think we're going to end up with these 2 conferences in 5-10 years from now. And, I think there's really nothing you can do about it other than stop watching the game, which that's not going to happen, right? We love football. We love college football too much to stop watching it. It's just going to be a hard pill to swallow.
If that happens, the sport will shrink, not grow.
So I was watching an episode of one of the guys. I don't remember. Maybe it was Dennis Dodd, but he mentioned that his sources told him that if the SEC and the Big Ten were to break off, their money would double.
Yes, they would double. They would double.
Which,
they would double. But you know what the cost is of going through all these court cases? They're not splitting away. They're not splitting away tomorrow. They might split from the NCAA. They're not splitting from the ACC and the Big 12. Not now. I wish this would, because you got all these politicians, you got all these states. This isn't like a game of risk. There's going to be such a heavy cost if they did that now, which is not being computed in NASCAR. I'm not going to go down that road. They became them. They got themselves to be a regionalized sport. It could happen 7-8 years from now. It's not happening now. It's just.
So I have one question for you, Greg. Yeah. And so I was thinking about this as well. The committee with Condoleezza Rice and some more folks, they talked about potentially creating another division within Division One, within the NCAA, that allows these football powers to, create their own rules and basically be their own entity under the umbrella. From my understanding, it was under the umbrella of the NCAA. Do you know what I'm talking about?
A little bit, yes.
So I think it's called the Division One project or whatever project. I forgot the name of it. Mm-hmm. But I was thinking if the NCAA suggested there'd be, and I think Baker suggested there'd be another division within the NCAA, will that protect the two leagues from breaking off from a legal standpoint if it's just another division within the NCAA tier?
I don't know.
Does that make sense now?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to. Can you send me something on that?
Oh yeah, I'll send it to you. I think it was Charlie Baker, maybe like a couple months ago. I think he called it the Division One project, where I think he went on an interview with ESPN where he talked about maybe the big teams creating their own division and they create their own rules in football only. But I'll send it to you here in a bit. I'm eating dinner right now, but I'll send it to you and just read over it. But that's what I took from it.
All right. I appreciate it. Send it to me.
Yep. Have a blessed day.
Got it. Thanks for the call, sir. This whole thing of Tony boy, I cannot wait till this. I cannot wait till they formalize this CFP. I cannot wait till this gets done, because once it gets done, I know we're still going to have more talk of a Power 2 breaking away from everybody, completely breaking away, but it's going to die down somewhat. I hope.
Call from
JD.
JD, the floor is yours.
How you doing, sir?
Doing good. Doing good.
I wasn't going to call in tonight, but then now you have another topic that fascinates me, and here I am again. So, it's just keep dragging me in. But
can you hold on a second, JD? I got to get something off my chest. Morris Simmons wants people to understand that some schools don't measure up to the Power 2. This elitism is really starting to I can't really even swallow it anymore. You guys remember back in the day, remember when there wasn't a Big East basketball? There wasn't a Big East basketball. It wasn't very powerful. It was nothing. It was just a bunch of Catholic schools on the East Coast. But suddenly it became a powerhouse. right? Suddenly they got the Georgetown, St. John's getting all these star players. It got hot. It became things, this power to obsession with everybody. It's like, I don't know, is it like a, it almost feels like people are, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but I spend more time talking about this power to that's not going to happen right now than I almost talk about any other subject. What is the obsession over it? I don't understand it. Like, what are do you don't want the competition from the other schools? You don't want David and Goliath matchups. You don't want all the part of the country having representation. You just do you want Major League Baseball just to be the Yankees and the Red Sox? I don't get it. I don't get this obsession over it. Yes, schools or conference try to better themselves all the time. Realignment doesn't ever stop. I get all this. I'm the one that's been putting this out there forever. But this obsession to cut everybody off from the highest axis of college football, like they can't never compete. Like never ever compete. Like only the top football players want to go to these certain schools. I'm really having a hard time with this. Because the chances of it happening now are like 1%. 1%, and yet I spend probably 75% of my time talking about this fantasy. I don't get it. Yes, the Big Ten's mighty. The SEC is mighty. Okay, we know that. We talk about it. We have to talk about it. But let's break away from everybody. I cannot wait for this 12-team playoff. I cannot wait for the whole country to be consumed by their part of the race in this. The G5 schools, the ACC knowing that their champion is going to get a bye and probably going to get a bye. I cannot wait for this because I think it's going to destroy this fantasy that this Power 2 is going to be so fantastic, because it isn't going to be fantastic. JD, I apologize for the rant, but it's like every other comment, I cannot wait for the next 8 years to be secured, and I don't have to talk about this every day. JD, go ahead. I apologize.
No, you're fine, sir, and I'm in agreement with you. I don't like the thought of schools not having the opportunity to compete. You know, I'm not an Oregon State and Washington State fan at all, but I hate that they are possibly being relegated to G5. You know, when they were Power 4 members. You know, and you know, I don't think it's fair, but at the same time, you know, the way everything's changing, we are where we are. But what I was calling about was North Carolina. If the ACC was to implode in 2024, what is the catalyst now? Because it won't be FSU alone, okay? There has to be more. Well, how does North Carolina begin an exit from the ACC now without being in lockstep with North Carolina State? They can't hire law firms. They can't sue the ACC without permission. You know, it's like North Carolina and NC State now politically in whatever maneuver and plan moving forward, they have to work together for some type of an end for them to be the ones to initiate it, okay? Otherwise, other factors have to fall into place to create openings for them, okay? So now what does this do to Clemson? If Clemson's, you know, aligning themselves up with North Carolina, but now North Carolina has one hand tied behind their back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is Clemson now just in limbo?
Yeah. That's a good point.
And it's like, okay, well, are we waiting on the ESPN whether or not they renew? Are we waiting till 2025 now for all these teams? And you know, it just raises so many questions. You know, I don't know, man. I've probably thought 3 or 4 more questions as I'm talking to you here, but it's just it has that is a really, really big deal. And it you know, I sit here and I wonder, and I'm like, okay, well, now the only real 2 schools that are available at the moment, you would assume Clemson, but you know Florida State. You know, does that mean now the SEC is going to have to wait till 25 or 2026 before they can make any future moves? You know?
Yeah.
I don't know, sir. I mean, and what's the chance North Carolina ends up staying in the ACC?
I don't. I don't think there's much of a chance. If Florida State can get out, nah. Even if they take the hit, they're still going to get out. In my opinion.
I mean, I sit here and I wonder now. We see collusion is happening all the way through. Now, what is the SEC doing? Is the SEC going to pressure ESPN to announce sooner that they're not going to extend the ACC contract? Because if that's the only way they're going to be able to get North Carolina out,
yeah.
If Sankey tells ESPN, hey, we really want North Carolina, which I'm sure they know that.
Yes,
obviously, they're reporting on it.
Yeah.
They have to pressure ESPN not to renew that deal because that's the only way that they can really negotiate with North Carolina in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do they begin the That's what I can't wrap my mind around right now is how do they begin the process when the people in charge of that process are represented by their rival? I don't know. And the impending implosion, I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I just think the timeline got pushed back.
Oh. Maybe.
So,
that March 22nd is that's a big day, JD.
It is.
That's a big day.
Well, if FSU is enough to cause the implosion, so be it.
Yeah.
But if it requires more teams and it requires some other move, I don't see the other. The other move was North Carolina getting themselves wiggled loose where they could become available. That's what the death knell of the conference was going to be for me. Now it's so much more difficult. I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm trying to figure out how do they start. Because the people that are in charge of starting the process aren't going to let them unless there's a spot for NC State in some fashion or the other. And that's the thing that I can't get past on what the next move is, or not. I know what the next moves are going to be. I just can't grasp exactly when the time frame is. The ACC's life might have just got extended by an extra year or two. But one other thing that we talked about a couple of nights ago, I think it might have even been last night. If they do get, remember we talked about that play-in game?
Yeah.
The way that the SEC and Big Ten can get even more teams involved, you don't have a semifinal round, but let's say you have a conference championship and you have 1 and 2 play each other. Well, you don't have just one play-in game. You have 2 play-in games. Mm-hmm. So 3 plays 6 and 4 plays 5.
Oh.
The winners of those games. So now you basically have a conference playoff, but you don't have to have additional weeks. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I get it. That's interesting.
And I think they'll get creative on that.
Yeah.
But
that's
anyway.
Intriguing. It's intriguing to me. That's for sure.
Well, I think they'll get creative, ways to make a little extra money. But yeah, I was a little late tuning into your show, but then, like I said, once I kind of caught up on the whole North Carolina thing, I don't know, that's what just got my mind going a million different directions, and I'm still trying to find out what all the members of the ACC, what do they really want? I was interacting with Jim Williams the other day on Twitter, and it's just good, nothing back and forth, just, and that's one of the things, the questions that I've asked, and I've asked even others. What do all the members of the ACC want? We think we know what North Carolina wants, but Miami, part of the brass at Miami seems like they want to leave, and I'm not sure all of them want to leave. What do all the rest of the ACC members, what do they really want? Would they wish the ACC to survive? Are they talking to the Big 12 in other conferences just to prepare for the ACC implosion? Or are they just afraid to make any moves? What do they really want? And that's what I would like to know.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that's what everybody would like to know.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's great. Great question, and you're phrasing it very well, JD. I don't know. I think they would want out if they knew they had a landing spot, but they really don't know if they have a landing spot until they have the avenue to get out and then have real talks with the SEC and the Big Ten.
Well, what really raised those questions about what the ACC teams would want was when you were telling me that telling us that the UNC president is on the board or committee or whatever with Jim Phillips, or the UVA. And if Virginia is so highly desired by the SEC, then why are they openly trying to negotiate, or work on the stability of the ACC? Why are they? Again, there's just so many things that are happening in public. Some of that might be just for face, but I don't know. There's just been all these assumptions that 10 or 12 ACC teams would love to leave. Do they really? And I just can't get that answer, and that's the answer I would love, because that's gonna help predict the future. But anyway, a lot of rambling questions. I really don't have a lot to say. I just have a lot of questions to ask, and maybe somebody can answer them for me. All right.
Okay. Thank you, JD, Mr. Seminole.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, sir. Great call. Great call. We do have some breaking news. Breaking news.
Call from.
Oh, just lost somebody. We do have breaking news, everybody. First of all, Jeremy Nork, beyond Notre Dame, UNC, Florida State, do other teams. Hold on, everybody. We're going to get to everything here.
Call from.
Garfield Park.
Garfield Park. Can you hold a second here?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it. I want to do, I got to do super chat. I have to do a breaking news. And then I want to get a comment about a comment. Then we'll get to you as quick as we can, sir. Okay.
Alrighty.
Jeremy Nork, beyond Notre Dame, North Carolina, Florida State, do other teams add enough value to the Big Ten media rights deal if getting full shares before diminishing returns for current members? Well, remember, Washington and Oregon didn't even get full shares. The media market is still tight. Notre Dame would grease all skids. If Notre Dame is part of what the Big Ten can lure in, then everybody's getting full shares. Washington State and Oregon State would get bumped up. Notre Dame and whoever would come with them. And, of course, North Carolina as well. But besides that, I do see a diminishing return for the current members in this tight media market. Thank you, Jeremy, for your super chat, for your generosity to the channel. We also have breaking news. Pete Thamel, Football Rules Committee discussed action on faking injuries. They discuss if a player's injured, clock stops, and the player has to sit out the possession series. A timeout can get the player back in the game. But this is the big one. Transfers will now be able to sign national letters of intent starting in December 2024. The schools have pushed for this, not surprisingly, as there's nothing that binds the portal commits. Thank goodness this is happening. Players have been, quote unquote, committing to schools portal, and then they go somewhere else. That happened to the Gophers like 3 times in the last portal window. Holy smokes. The only thing that bind a player when they went into the portal is when they started classes at the school that they were going to. But there was no letter of intent. Finally that's done. Okay, that's going to clean up. And before we get to Garfield Park, I do want to get back to this Power 2 fantasy that's starting in 2026. Go Black says, Greg, you don't understand. CFP is now Wall Street. If they sense true completion, they would just buy you out or just destroy you outright. Rock and rant, Greg, you're going to have to light a candle for your hopes for the non-breakaway college football playoffs. This is what I do know. There's a whole lot of things I don't understand, but I do know this. ESPN and Fox Sports is spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on the Big 12 contract. Just that alone for the next 6 years. No, it's not as much as the SEC and the Big 10, but it gets into the billions of dollars. What interest do they have of a breakaway? What the value of the Big 12 would absolutely tank. ESPN and Fox don't want this breakaway. There's enough. It's like, I can't believe I have to do this. It's like saying we're going to cut off half the bowl games. We're just going to contract because, it's consolidated. But almost all these bowl games will make money. So they keep running. The Big 12 makes money for ESPN and Fox. There are other slots out there. There are other fan bases out there. There's sponsorships. There's advertisers willing to advertise. There's a 6-year commitment. What are you going to do? There's just going to be a breakaway and you're going to crash? Fox and ESPN don't want a breakaway. They don't want it. I don't understand. Again, I don't understand what people can't comprehend this. It doesn't make any. Now, 8 years from now, 7 years from now, yes, and we'll talk about it then. But there is true economic, if you want to just have it based on economics, ESPN and Fox doesn't want the Big 12, and they have commitments to the ACC for right now, ESPN, and a whole bunch of other reasons why. Anyways, Garfield Park, thank you for your patience. The floor is yours.
Preach, Greg.
Yeah.
Preach.
It's just ridiculous.
This is exactly what this is exact topic I wanted to talk about right here. The Power 2.
Yeah.
Not only does ESPN and Fox not benefit from a power, quote unquote, Power 2, but neither does the Big Ten or the SEC.
No.
I mean, no, not at all. It's like It's insane to me to think that like what the SEC and Big Ten want to compete with the NFL, because that's essentially what people are setting them up for. It's like all these folks are buying into some national media narratives who don't really care essentially about like the foundation of college football. They care about the national spectacle. It's like I honestly think the elites, being the SEC and the Big Ten, get it more than your rank and file college football fan.
I think so.
That's why they're willing to do 3-3-2-2, because they understand that like their product is better if there's people like the Big 12 and ACC and others involved. Like no one wants to see Ohio State and Alabama play every year. It's like it's just not interesting after a while.
And here's another point. You know, the SEC and the Big Ten, yes, they have the advantages. Yes, they do.
100%.
Yes, they do. Yeah. Wait, just hold on, Garfield. Hold on a second. They have the advantages. They have the advantages. Okay? We know this. It's growing advantages. We have been documenting it for many, many years. We get it. Now, don't they want to enjoy the advantages? Don't they get to? Exactly. This is what they were working for, so now they're going to enjoy it. But you know what? The Buckeyes have had the advantage over the Gophers for 70 years. Okay?
Exactly. Yep.
But what? I mean, but we shut out Minnesota from the Big Ten. At what point? At what point do you want to just constrict everything? At what point don't you want there to be competition anymore? Who cares if somebody has a great advantage of you? You're still playing the football game. There's only so many football players. There's only so many spots in those SEC Big Ten. I apologize, Garfield Park. Go ahead.
No. I love it. Look, it's not the Power 2. It's the Power 10 programs. It's not like
But Daniel, hold on a second. Daniel. But the ratings say otherwise. But here's the problem. ESPN and Fox are still making money on Big 12 games. They're still making money on ACC games. They're still making money. They don't want to shatter everything else because they're still making money on all this stuff. It's not like the Big 12 is dragging ESPN down in the. Why?
I mean, what you're saying. I'm not to interrupt, but like what you're saying, just to like a average person, makes so much sense. It's like, I don't know. It's just insane to me that people think that like I think, and I'll say it one more time before I get off here, but like the folks in the SEC and Big Ten get it. So that's the good part, right? Yeah. Like the elites there, the people making decisions get that they need a healthy college football system. It's not about, okay, let's go compete with the NFL. That's just what I wanted to say. I love that you get it, and that's what's important. So, I mean, all these other fans that are trying to like buy into this narrative that the Power 2 is the way everybody wants to go. Maybe it's the way they're like feeling it wants to go, but I don't think the TD or even SEC commissioner or understand that or want to go that direction. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. All righty, man.
All right, man.
I appreciate your patience with me and your phone call.
No problem.
Man, the last 2 nights I have been out of sorts. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Call again, Garfield.
All right, have a good weekend.
You
Cheers.
too.
Bye.
I love Daniel. I love everybody in the chat.
Call from
Crab Cakes and Football.
Crab Cakes and Football. The floor is yours. But wait a second. Steve-O, Super Chat, yes. Why doesn't this crowd understand the Big 12 deal? Thank you, Steve-O. Thank you for your Super Chat. I appreciate your generosity to this channel. Crab Cakes and Football, thank you for your patience. The floor is yours. Hopefully I treat you better than I did Garfield Park. And next time Garfield Park calls, he's going to have the floor for a long time. Go ahead, sir.
Well, first off, that with all this debate going on about the 4 qualifiers, 3 qualifiers, 2 qualifiers, you got to remember the ACC is still in existence, and they can't go into these negotiations saying, "Hey, the ACC is not going to exist." So they're just prepping themselves, getting ready for the inevitable, or at least in their mind, the inevitable, without actually saying it out loud, because you can't be in a room with the ACC and say, well, in a couple of years, the ACC won't be in existence and everything else. So they're just trying to grab what territory they can, I think. And if the ACC implodes or whatever happens with that situation, if they become a lesser conference or whatever, them automatic qualifiers are going to either go to the SEC or the Big Ten or even the Big 12, because I think the Big 12 is going to stay around for a while. I don't think the ACC will, but I think the Big 12 is going to be hanging around for a bit. I like their conference. I think they're a really even-tiered conference. They don't have a super powerhouse in it, and that's actually attractive, in my opinion, because you don't know who's going to win it each year. But and then when it comes to the automatic qualifiers, leaving out the ridiculousness of yesterday's news with well, I won't even go there. I've already given my opinion on that. But the ACC most years would never even had a second team to qualify. They were that bad. And the Big 12 actually would need a extra qualifier, because with them bringing in Utah, and I'm assuming Colorado will eventually rise with Deion Sanders, and you still got Oklahoma State, you still got West Virginia. I know I'm giving them love, although I'm a Maryland fan, and so everything else eventually. So yeah, I think this is all going to get rearranged anyway at some point. It has to. So I think right now they're just throwing their shots, trying to get what they can get, and then whenever the ACC does fall apart, now they're going, okay, this is what we're dealing with. What do we do with these qualifiers? Everything else is settled. So that's one part. And then I noticed on your North Carolina thing that you said earlier today, when you was talking about North Carolina State and what the Board of Governors or whatever they're called had said, when they said the financials for the families and this and that and the other, I think that was a shot at the Big Ten. I think they were trying to protect the families from traveling all the way out to an Oregon, a Washington, and a California. I think that's their way of telling the SEC we want into the SEC.
Well, so, they do want to go. Yes. The Board of Governors are even more pro SEC than the Board of Regents of North Carolina. But yes.
But you got to remember, elections are going to happen between then and there, and things could turn. I mean, if the next person that gets in office or if a term expires on their board and the next person up might have different views, they might be more pro Big Ten than the SEC, or they might even be more pro Big 12 than the rest of. I mean, so. And personally, as a Maryland fan, I would love to bring North Carolina in. Don't think it'll happen, because that'll at least give us a rivalry of some sort, or even NC State. Because when we played them last year in the bowl season, we actually broke a 33-33 tie with them. So, I mean, that's a pretty good series right there when you're tied 33-33. I mean, not too many people can really say that. Yep. So that was nice.
Yep.
But so either way, but I think, they can't really decide on a playoff structure, in my opinion, truly for 26 until either the ACC does an implosion or something happens with the Florida State or whatever. Because how can they be making plans with their new partner while their other partner is still in the room? That would be very uncomfortable. So, hey, we're going to be planning for you not to be around anymore. I don't even know.
They're not even kicking the G5 out the door. And now people think they're going to kick the Big 12 and ACC out the door.
They're not, but I mean, I think the ACC will survive. Depending on how many teams leave. If Florida State leaves, Clemson leaves, Miami leaves, North Carolina leaves, we just got to say NC State because of the thing today. If them teams leave, okay, yeah, it's going to be extremely diminished. But now you can bring it to East Carolina, the USFs, the Appalachian States, and a few others to backfill it, and maybe they ask West Virginia if they want to join. I doubt they would, but I mean, to try to keep prominence. But if Notre Dame does get out of the ACC, if FSU goes and they decide to buy their way out, then the next question is, what does Stanford do? Because Stanford is a long-time rivalry with Notre Dame, and rivalries is what everybody's grabbing. That's why you got USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington. And I think if FSU goes, it's probably going to be Miami. And then Notre Dame's probably going to, like I just said, it's probably going to be Stanford. So, I don't know, but the money's got to be there. The money's not going to be there for this major expansion into 24 teams. I think it's going to stop at 20. And I don't even think they really want to do that. They just want to try to make life easier for everybody by going to 20. So that's my thoughts on that. I know I was long-winded tonight.
Nope,
normally I'm shorter.
Okay. Beautiful crab cakes and football. Thank you, sir.
All right, man.
You got it.
All right, later.
You guys, I love everybody in the chat. We're disagreeing. We're throwing elbows. I'm throwing a fit. But I love all you guys. I'm glad we disagree, because if we agreed, this place would be boring. So keep it coming. Keep it coming. But I pray on the maroon gold God, gopher God in the sky. Hold on. Jeez.
Call from
BJ.
BJ, can you hold on 1 second?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it. I love all you guys. I'm glad we disagree and everything, but I pray to the gopher, maroon gold God in the sky, that we have a committed, agreed upon, uniformed, ready to sign on the dotted line CFP playoff format for the next 8 years, 6 years after the 2026 season. And I hope it gets done in the next week or the following week. Please, please, please. Thank you so very much. BJ, the floor is yours. How you doing again, sir?
Yeah, pretty good. So I found an article that we was talking about earlier. It's AP News. It's a reputable site written by Ralph Russo. Basically, it said December the 5th, in a letter sent to more than 350 Division I schools Tuesday, Baker said he wants the association to create a new tier of NC Division I sports where schools will be required to offer at least half of the athletes a payment.
The SEC and the Big Ten did not want that. They shut that down. That's not happening.
Yeah, I think what I look at it as, that was horrible. The 30,000 was horrible. But if Baker is allowing a new division, maybe the SEC and the Big Ten can create their own rules, right? So, and I'm not saying it's even feasible, but I was wondering, would that provide cover for antitrust litigation if it's under the umbrella of the NCAA? Does that make sense or no?
Yeah. I just think all that is done. That's not going to happen. They should now. The Big Ten and the SEC are going to be so. Besides the playoff format and besides the distribution model of the college football playoff format, the next biggest issue for next week and the following week is governance, right? Voting rights, and the Big Ten and the SEC are going to try to stack the votes the way where they are running things. So is that what you're...
I agree. And I do think, ESPN has this thing where whenever Sankey wants to create a narrative, they give him time and space to do so on their network. And he said something a few weeks ago about he doesn't think, some random school should have the same voting rights as an SEC school. I think he said that multiple times. So I think it's one of those things where he's not going to budge on that. I think he doesn't want, a MAC school or G5 school or non-Power 2 school to have the same amount of influence on making decisions as his conference. I don't know where that's going to fly over with the other programs to voluntarily vote yourself down, demote yourself, but I'm pretty sure it's not even waivable for Sankey because he said it so many times.
Well, if you're gonna, if Greg Sankey has, I'm not gonna go down that road, but all right, I don't really have anything to add to that.
Lastly, is this is more of a football question.
Yeah.
So with the new conferences at play,
yeah,
do you think that, like the previous caller commented on, do you think it's hard to set up a legitimate, fair CFP when it's still, it's still fairly dynamic in terms of who can go where and who can, what conference is going to be here in 3 years?
It's I don't know if fair is the correct word, but it's doable because, again, the governance part of this, which has to be done also here in the next 3 weeks, where they're going to hopefully be nimble enough, be able to execute a change in the college football playoff format more easily than they can do now, because they're going to change the governance structure, i.e. the Big Ten and the SEC are going to have the most votes when they get their votes weighted. So if the ACC implodes, let's just pretend, we're just pretending that my version of 4-4-2-2 on the automatic qualifiers, if ACC implodes, those two automatic qualifiers go somewhere else, so they completely disappear. I think they're going to be able to adjust the college football playoffs more easily inside the current media contract, unlike before when they needed unanimous vote. They're not going to need that going forward. So not fair, but doable to change it, to be nimble if and when the ACC implodes within this new college football playoff format. Does that make sense?
It does. And lastly, do you think that how big of a role, in your personal opinion, does ESPN or any of the network providers have in shaping these new CFP?
Well, ESPN does, because they own it all right now. So they're threatening to pull out. They have massive influence. ESPN has massive influence. Now Fox has some influence, right? Because they want the Big 10, the Big 12 to have representation, but the big one is the Big 10 for them. They're the ones that are pushing for the 4 automatic qualifiers. It's obvious. Tony Petitti has to do their bidding. They have huge impact. Okay.
All right, well, again, thanks for having me on. I'm going to go back in the comment section and great show.
Appreciate it, BJ. Thanks for calling again, sir. All right. So this is what we got going on here. This weekend, some point this weekend, PATC is going to put out their quarterback rankings for the Big Ten Conference for the 2024 season. We've done the other 3 power conferences. We're going to get to the Big Ten this weekend. Is there going to be more CFP reporting? Maybe a little, but it all sets up next week, virtual meetings, the commissioners. It's going to be wild. And one of the reasons why it's going to be wild, well, there's so much consternation, so many different interests at stake. But it's also wild because it's going to be wild because they need to get it done. They need to get it done. ESPN is not bluffing. I don't believe they're bluffing. I don't think they're not bluffing. They're ready to pull this deal if they don't know what it's even going to look like. So, next week, stick with us here at Peek Around the Corner. We're going to be following that story and everything else in college football. If you're new to the channel or if you haven't done so yet, please hit the subscribe button. Put on those notifications because we can come on live at any time. We could be on live Saturday morning, breakfast time. If there's a big story breaking, we will be live. So make sure you have your notifications on. Subscribe to the channel. If you've enjoyed our content tonight, smash the like button. If you did not like our content, because I got a little testy for the second live show in a row, if you did not like it, hit the thumbs down button and let me know in the chat or in a comment at Flug Empire and X and let me know. Don't do that, Greg. Do not do that. And I will listen. So I appreciate you all coming in on this live show. I appreciate the donations that keep this channel growing. I appreciate your generosity so very much. All the new members of Cloak and Dagger Early Peek, if you want to be a member of this channel, go to the link provided in the description. Hit the link, hit the join button to become a Cloak and Dagger Early Peek member. I appreciate the incredible chats in the chat room, and thank you so much for the wonderful phone calls, like always. The PATC community rocks. Absolutely rocks, even when the fat guy from Minnesota loses it. Once again, the CFP thing has to get decided. It has to. Or, if it doesn't, you all will be going to my funeral next Thursday. Until next time, from all of us at PATC, to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other.